If you don't want to play Super Break, I will be seeing you guys in version 4. With that out of the way, after one entire year, Super Break has finally gotten the vertical upgrade with the Dahlia, built-in defense down, weakness implant, weakness break efficiency, break effect buffs, a Super Break multiplier, and the new toughness ignore mechanic for Super Break damage. So I'm sure that after such a long time for the entire team comp not really getting any love, you probably have quite a lot of questions. Is she gonna be worth it? How much of an upgrade will Dahlia bring? Who is the best Super Break DPS with Dahlia? Can Break even keep up with the endgame content? To put it simply, if you are a Super Break main, Dahlia is the closest thing you have to a mass pool. So without further ado, let's jump into today's content. So before her character kit, just in a very brief summary, this will be the following buffs that the Dahlia will be giving to pretty much most of your characters. So defense down 18%, weakness break efficiency at 50%, dance partner with 60% super break damage, skill point recovery from every 2 follow-up attacks, break effect of 24% on Dahlia's break effect plus 50% base to a team, and 30% speed buff after a weakness implant. Now the Dahlia is essentially the embodiment of the Super Break vertical investment because she completely removes one of, if not the biggest issues that Super Break have right now, which is the ability to deal Super Break damage before weakness break. Now this mechanic is pretty much the next closest thing to a revolutionary upgrade similar to Fuchs Exo Toughness back in version 2.7, but the difference is Exo Toughness still ultimately could not overcome the fundamental issue of things like the toughness bar inflation as well as toughness block mechanics, both of which has been the reason why Super Break has been one of the weaker teams in Honkai Star as of now, at least until Dahlia. So jumping into a Creator kit, in casual terms, you want to use Dahlia's ultimate before your Super Break DPS's turn or your rest of your other teammates, for example your Lingsha or even your Fuke, to deal toughness bar for the weakness implant, and then use your skill or basic depending on the skill point economy. So for a basic attack, it is pretty skill point positive similar to Runmei. You could skill once and do a basic until a skill expire, but the skill itself does have better toughness bar damage as well as 3 target on top of more energy, so you'll most likely be using this more than Runmei. Going to her skill, it is basically the exact same zone as Runmei with a 50% break efficiency without the damage buff, which pretty much has always been used for Super Break anyways, and now you get the toughness reduction into Super Break damage for this zone over here. So pretty much this will be 100% uptime, you're never going to be getting an issue, and as I've mentioned earlier, the skill itself also deals 3 target destruction toughness damage, which is even higher than your basic attack. So if your Super Break DPS needs more health to deal more toughness and you have the skill point to spare, this skill can see more value compared to, say, for example, spamming Fuke or Runmei or even Lingsha sometimes. Therefore, the Dahlia's ultimate is a 4-turn debuff for 18% defense down and weakness implant for herself, which is always going to be fire, as well as a dance partner. So for both Budo and Rappa, you can easily bypass the element lock mechanics, especially for Rappa, which completely has none. The defense ignore is very nice, especially with Iron Cavalry as well as Super Break's multiple exponential defense down stacking, but the main thing is still gonna be the weakness implant for non-Firefly users. Now a little bit similar to most debuffers, you want to apply this right before your damage dealer goes in this case your Super Break toughness bar damage. Now this is very important for units like Lingsha who have a problem dealing toughness bar damage with Budo and Rappa, but now with Dahlia, you can actually pivot your Lingsha's toughness bar much better because you can then get the free fire weakness implant without Firefly, allowing for your actual Super Break damage to break much faster. Now keep in mind, just like any debuffs, despite lasting 4 turns, it will not refresh on new enemies nor enemy phase changes, so when encountering these situations, be sure to save your ultimate right before your units are about to go to deal the highest amount of toughness bar damage. Then moving on to the Dahlia's talent, to kind of summarize all that is a very long wall of text, she has a turn 1 ultimate even on break effect rope, and the dance partner will always be the main Super Break DPS, or if you want a DPS Lingsha, as well as an additional 60% Super Break damage multiplier for a dance partner. Now the follow-up attack itself deals a considerable amount of Super Break damage against weakness broken enemies, where the Super Break multiplier is over 2 times higher because it has 5 individual hits on top of her own skill, which adds another instance of Super Break damage, totaling to 10 different Super Break damage as you can see over here. Since it refreshes only once a turn, getting high speed on Dahlia will definitely rotate this faster, and ideally you try to save this Super Break follow-up attack during the time when the target is going to be weakness broken. Then lastly, for a technique is pretty much just use it, you get a dimension, you get a scale, instant damage, very good, very nice. Now for our major traits, it's going to be a little bit interesting. So for number 1, more break effect for the team, but this only lasts 1 turn if you're playing sustainless. This is definitely built to encourage sustained break teams, since it's only from teammates and not from enemies nor Firefly self-sustain, but you will see why this is really needed, especially when we talk about our sustainless runs. And then for the second trait, it's going to be 1 skill point every 2 follow-up attack for a decent enough skill point economy. And then the last point is actually very interesting, which is a 30% speed buff as well as the energy. So for this 30% speed buff, it is also applied to Dahlia herself, but also for Boothill and Firefly, unless we try, for example, Super Break Anexa as well as Silverwolf to implant the weakness. Now the added line is mainly for Firefly as of now, for some toughness bar damage as well as a 10% energy recovery, helping with Firefly's ultimate uptime, but this 10% energy also affects Dahlia, so her rotation is going to be a little bit better. Now specifically for Firefly, I'm going to be splitting this portion into this bonus section for Firefly speed tuning. Based on 150 action value, the goal is to essentially hit an immediate turn right after complete combustion ends to immediately cast her ultimate kit. Now the basic fundamental concept is basically that because Firefly can trigger the weakness implant as well as energy refund every single turn, if she casts this at least 4 times, she can instantly get back to the ultimate, because the ultimate is always going to be 60% max energy at the start, and casting her skill 4 times is going to give you the 40% remaining. So it is extremely nice to get this down to just essentially a 100% uptime for the ultimate, and you can even speed tune to get Firefly's additional turn right after this ends, but it would require some additional things which I'm going to be talking about right here. So in summary, with Dahlia, you want to aim for 188.8 speed, below this or above 172.4 speed. With Dahlia and 24% action value advance, which is 1 DDD, or with Dahlia and 2 action value advance, which is 1 DDD and like 1 E2 Fugue or 2 DDDs, the speed are going to be seen as it is respectively. Now for all these over here, we're going to be assuming that you're not going to be running Runmei, but if you do want to give Runmei, for example, like a sustainless Firefly team, then just add another 10.4 speed to the Creator stats you can see on your screen over here. So for this strategy, you do not want to exceed the upper speed threshold, because otherwise the turn will happen inside complete combustion, leading to the inability to cast the normal skill, which should instantly push you up to 100% energy, with Dahlia's help for the 40% energy and the original 60% from the skill. So you can see this picture over here, you want the Firefly to go right after Sam ends, not before. Also, the reason why you want to turn inside is also because you don't spend the whole turn without the 60 speed buff, and you get 1 extra attack from the skill in the 0 cycle. So you basically deal 1 additional toughness bar damage after the skill, and then can go back into the enhanced skill once you go back into Sam again. So PS for this, Final Signature Light Cone can also be considered for higher speed thresholds, as you can see over here, such as 172.4, as it provides a base speed of 12, or lower thresholds for 134.8, because with a lower speed threshold, you can in fact get up to 146.4 with a Runmei and 2 DDDs over here, which can then allow you to run an attack boots Firefly, right? So that is pretty much going to be the Firefly speed tuning portion. And then for her minor trait, it's gonna be break effect as well as speed, which is yay, more speed, always gonna be nice. And then for her skill level, it's always gonna be talent, ultimate, followed by skill, followed by her basic. Then jumping to her signature light cone, this effect is actually really decent, because I tested it with resolution S5. The damage wise is not too big of a difference for an S1, but it was done with 3 targets, as you can see from this screenshot over here, because the damage was not enough to get rid of the mobs before the spawn when I was using resolution. So I do expect the S1 to be better than an 11% upgrade that you can see over here. Now do note that the defense down stacking for resolution works well, but if you exceed it with things like E1 Ranmei and E1 Lingsha on top of a Glamorph 25%, Fuke 18%, and Dahlia 18%, it would easily exceed 100%, which makes resolution completely useless. Second of all, if you are going to be running Fuke with resolution actually does not stack by itself, so unless you have a Cypher signature Lycon to give her more speed as well as the defense down, then I wouldn't recommend this at all, right? On top of that, if you do want to run resolution, you would need to give Dahlia the EHR main stat to apply the defense down, otherwise her base EHR is basically close to 0, which is going to be really bad. So alternatives aside from your Cypher signature Lycon is going to be a tutorial as well as solitary for energy can also be very useful in certain situations, perhaps even a 4-piece ego Dahlia build because of skill, follow-up attack and ultimate all deal very good toughness bar damage. And on top of everything, her own signature Lycon does give you that 1 skill point recovery, which is on her ultimate, making a little bit similar to Ranmei, but unfortunately this cannot be given to Fuke because she does not have a winner's implant, but it makes skill point economy a lot more manageable because Super Break has one of the highest skill point consumption teams across all 3 Super Break DPS, and it will definitely take a little bit of getting used to once you've been playing the Remembrance flagship with your Enforced girlfriend and you kind of just forgot how to manage your skill points. Now moving on to the Relics and the build session for the Dahlia. For general purpose, Iron Cavalry with 2-piece Calpagini is the easiest set to use and follow, while some niche situations like Eagle, Luxaga, Vonware, it can also be considered to sacrifice some super damage for more action value. So for the Iron Cavalry is pretty much going to be the best and still at highest possible damage, and her personal damage amount for Dahlia, especially follow-up attack, can be very respectable, as well as the ultimate dealing more super damage itself. You can consider running the 4-piece Eagle with ER rope as well as 2-piece energy for more action value, though her ultimate art time has essentially no issue even on break effect roll while on Iron Cavalry. And then for the 2-piece, since Dahlia is always going to be a dance partner, she will guarantee 100% uptime on the 40% break effect from Calpagini, so it's not just for herself, but for pretty much every single Super Break user, for your Lingsha, for your Boot Hill, for your Rappa, for everyone, they can all run Calpagini as long as you pair them with Dahlia. So for Luxaga and Vonwag, similar to the 4-piece Eagle, you can use that for more energy regeneration depending on the fight. And then for the mainstay and subsets, HP or defense body, speed boots, HP or defense planner, as well as break effect rope or energy regeneration rope. For a subset, it's going to be speed over break effect. Now the Dahlia has no scaling whatsoever with offensive subs, so running pure defensive sets such as HP or defense would be ideal, especially if you want to try a sustainless rig, which has been around since with Harmony Trailblazer. Now the speed boots are very self-explanatory, and then for the rope between break effect and energy regeneration, break effect tends to be the most comfortable as we maintain 100% ultimate uptime while boosting not just our own damage but also our entire team due to the traits giving us the additional break effect based on Dahlia's own break effect. Since wield lasts for 4 turns, this shouldn't really have too big of a problem with content such as MOC, APOC, as well as Anomaly Arbitration. Now do note in pure fiction, where mobs respawn very frequently, or if faster enemies can remove their debuffs like Hule or Bronya Cleanse Cocolia, then energy regeneration can be considered to ensure 18% defense down and refresh your weakness implant. Now this is especially important for Rappa in pure fiction, who does not have a weakness implant on her own. Then moving on to her Eidolons, her Eidolon is actually really good and likely to be game-changing in the future. It literally has the Blade of the Ruin King built in if you play League of Legends, but instead of percentage max HP, it is percentage max toughness all the way out to 300 minimum 10 points per instance. So as of what we have right now, especially against content like Pure Fiction and mobs, where their toughness bar is not that high, you might not see that big of an importance because you guarantee a break regardless. But against like bosses, elites, especially with the toughness bar inflation, it is literally built in to hedge against toughness inflation. This E1 also allows your talent super damage multiplier to affect other allies like Lingsha or HMC and boost the multiplier for dance partner to 100%. But the main effect is definitely going to be this Blade of the Ruin King for toughness bar damage, because it really helps a lot against extremely high toughness bar bosses, especially if we're going to be talking about like Apocalyptic Shadows or bosses like the Sunday weekly boss in the upcoming Anomaly Arbitration. And otherwise, it is just going to be really good to ensure that you always deal this 25% fixed damage to make your Super DPS get into the broken state as fast as possible. Now, I also do want to keep in mind, given that this E1 is going to be built into the Dahlia's kit, there might be situations where we're going to be playing in future content for endgame more bosses with even more toughness bar inflation. So Super 8 users who do not have access to this, you might be getting even more problems as they make this higher and higher. Then moving on to E2. For an E2, I would say it's not that important because it's essentially just a 20% res pen for the most part. But the second effect is going to be really good, especially for content like Pure Fiction, or if the monsters are going to be spawning a lot of mobs, then you guarantee this will stay for the 80% defense down every single time. But once again, I think for an E2 it's not going to be that crazy, and for the E4 it's going to be yay, more damage, more vulnerability. That's going to be very nice. And then for the E6, I haven't tried it for myself, but from the way that this looks, it looks a little bit underwhelming for an E6 because break effect, it is a very big jump for it because it's actually 150%, but the way you play super break will remain relatively unchanged aside from the 20% action value advance from that one follow-up attack, which is still limited to once per turn. So at this point in time, E1 or S1, I would say that E0S0 Dahlia is already a very high cost investment for anyone who wants to play super break, but if you do want to spend one more cost, then E1 is a really good upgrade due to the toughness bar damage being a fixed 25%, which is gonna be really useful for pretty much every single match you're gonna be playing super break in, on top of the SB multiplier being 100% for the dance partner and the rest of the target being 40% for the entire team. For the S1, the skill point is quite nice, but for resolution, tutorial light cone, solidarity, as well as the cypher signature icon, they are all really decent, but you can consider this S1 if you do not have Fuchs S1 because resolution cannot stack. So that's pretty much it for Dahlia's Eidolons. Then moving on to the team comps, all of the following teams were tested during the upcoming MOC12, not the current one with Sam and Hule, because I think we're going to be playing it ourselves a login, but I want to just see what's coming next right after, because we do see the brand new MOC Evo Firefly Sam, so it's going to be Cocolia on full auto. The teams are all going to be E0S1. Now, I do want to stress, this fight, I chose it in particular because it was extremely difficult for Super Break, especially without the Dahlia, right? So I figured it was a very good test to show the disparity of what's to come in the future for Super Break users who are considering if they even want to get Dahlia in the first place. So for the first time ever, this is the table of results. Yep. Your Super Break DPS is literally cooked without Dahlia against the next Cocolia boss because Bronya can instantly pull Cocolia up every other action, resulting in full toughness recovery if she's gonna be weakness broken. Now, the weak one is still gonna be manageable because all 3 Super Break DPS can one cycle with Run Mei, so the gap is literally just by 1. But Cocolia herself does have very high physical res as well as imaginary res. The fire is gonna be at 0, but it is definitely gonna be a bit of an issue. Now, the biggest problem is not really because of the elemental res. It is just that most Super Break DPS will not be able to break Cocolia fast enough consistently because Run Mei literally does 0 toughness bar damage, which has always been Run Mei's biggest problem. And because you do not have the Dahlia, your 0 Super Break damage before break on top of the actual toughness bar of Cocolia is already going to be at 140. Combine this with Bronya's action value advance, toughness lock, as well as Cocolia's freeze and ultimate, insane ultimate damage, and all of the rest, this fight can become extremely difficult if you do not have Dahlia. I genuinely doubt Gallagher can actually sustain this comfortably. Even Lingsha was struggling. You know, you can see this Rappa overpower because Cocolia actually deals a ridiculous amount of damage, as well as the freeze is sometimes it's just going to be uncleansable even if you're going to be having Lingsha. Now, for this particular fight, you can definitely play around this mechanic by intentionally not breaking Cocolia right before Bron's action value advance, so that you can actually break her during the following action. But sometimes you simply have no choice due to your units being forced to attack, or if Cocolia is going to let go of her insane high everlasting winter ultimate and you might take too much damage. And sometimes the one is just way too fast and you just simply could not break them fast enough, leading to that situation, right? So even though this fight was mechanically designed around Dahlia for Super Break, which heavily boosts the gap between herself and Run Mei, I would say it poses an interesting perspective of what happens to Super Break if you simply cannot break fast enough, or if the weakness broken state doesn't last as long due to Bronya over here. So going into version 4, or if similar situations arise and you are a Super Break main without Dahlia, it would be very difficult to clear consistently at the E0 baseline, right? So that is pretty much it, the one for the test. Now jumping to the actual different teams, which is going to be the 3 different Super Break DPS. For Firefly, in the elephant for the room, yes, Firefly appears to be the main focus with Dahlia, though the other 2 Super Break DPS can still work, which I will discuss below for the other endgame content as well. So the environment will favor Firefly more than the other 2, being the fastest clearing Super Break DPS even on full auto, to show you how synergistic is the OG Super Break now with the Dahlia. Generally speaking, you will not see an issue with any endgame content on Super Break, as long as there's a site that can be used that isn't completely anti-Super Break. Your Firefly team should clear with 3 stars, no issues, while you're going to be running this with Dahlia, right? Now, the Dahlia's toughness ignore function, it is also directly benefits Firefly a lot because at E0, she has one of the most consistent high toughness bar damage against 3 targets, because for Boot Hill, you need to rely on him to stack on your pocket trick shot, and it's it's going to be only for single target, and then for Rappa, you need AoE to stack on her own charge, which falls off without her mobs. So for a sustainless run without runway, both Firefly and Boothill has very good performance, but Boothill is definitely not going to be casual friendly because you can time your skills as well as ultimate more strictly. Then moving on into Rappa, Dahlia essentially fixes one of Rappa's biggest problem, which is the lack of an imaginary implant. Now despite not really needing it per se, because she still can deal toughness bar damage regardless, it will make it way more efficient for each of her attacks. Not to mention, HMC can also benefit from the imaginary implant as long as Rappa is going to be the dance partner, while Dahlia Fugue gets the fire weakness implant. So for Rappa herself, note that her speed tuning is going to be 167 to guarantee 3 EBA, or 151 with 24% S5 DDD or E2 Fugue. Otherwise, her playstyle is relatively straightforward, so I hope that the Rappa mains who didn't get a Single Light Cone, you can kind of just pick them up in the future one day, right? And then lastly for Boothill, he is actually really fun DPS to use, especially if you go against scenarios where they have summons and then it's going to be a single target, for example, Argentine Epoch Shadows in the future. Now, Boothill definitely needs manual play the most out of any of the Super DPS, and arguably has the highest difficulty to function between the free pocket trickshot mechanic and the possibility to speed tune with the Eagle 4-piece. With Dahlia having an offensive ultimate, Boothill can actually stack on your instant triple pocket trickshot with skill, Fugue ultimate, skill, Dahlia ultimate, and skill again. Now you can definitely play sustainers a lot more comfortably because the previous sustainers runs were done with Ramen and HMC, which means both of them do not have any offensive ultimate. So in summary, Dahlia's performance, even against a specific stage that was really difficult for your Super DPS, which is going to be the upcoming Cocolia, she's still able to perform functionally well with all 3 Super DPS. But of course, Firefly is definitely going to be at this point the most synergistic, so that is pretty much going to come to the end of our team building section. For future in a live server, I do want to see Dahlia can work with like other niche comps, for example, Super Anexa, Super Finon, Super Facial, right? All these kind of different Super, and we'll look forward to see how that's going to be happening. Then for the final segment is going to be the Endgame Performance. I'll be showcasing this with all of the Super flagship and just generally talk about how they are going to be doing as well as some future expectations, or E0S1, some of them on full auto, some of them we're going to be on manual on the latest Endgame, right? So for Memory of Chaos, I did not test them against this Sam and Hule stage we have right now. I tested them in the upcoming stage against Cocolia as well as the brand new Propagation Sam. So I purely just used Firefly for this MOC, and you can see over here for the first half, it really showed what Dahlia can bring to the table due to Super Rig before the toughness lock mechanic. I won't repeat it too much because I've already said it previously. This team is really hard because of Cocolia, the Bronya, all that kind of stuff. But just expect your first half to see massive differences between Dahlia and no Dahlia team comps, regardless of your Super DPS. For the second half, it will be the latest MOC boss, Propagation Sam, and I will be leaving this for a separate video. But the mechanic is a little bit similar to True Sting as well, where you want to get rid of the bugs as soon as possible, which will then allow you to break and deal more damage. Now, this fight is definitely also going to be shield for Super because of the crit debuffs, so non-Super users do beware. Also, for this particular fight against the Propagation Sam, note that the full auto performance definitely made it a lot worse than it is because the bugs spawned do not have fire weakness. So one of Firefly's biggest issue in an AoE content is the inability for group fire implant, which is now pretty much fixed by Dahlia, which can then allow your Lingsha to also deal drastically higher toughness bar damage, thereby clearing considerably faster. So if you're going to be running a sustainless on full auto, this was done at a 2-cycle clear, as Sam and the fight doesn't really deal that much damage. So expect sustainless teams to get a very solid 1 if not 0 cycle with upgrades like either E2 Firefly or E1 Dahlia. Then jumping into Pure Vision, I essentially tested out both Firefly and Rappa. I didn't try Boothill because, you know, it's Boothill, right? We all know Firefly and Zurek in general have been performing exceptionally back in version 3, and with the latest shield buff as well as Dahlia having impressive AoE damage, we finally got our first full auto 3-star clear using a full E0 Firefly team. Now, note for E-Born Deer, the outrage can be incredibly annoying, especially you can see this part over here, heavily blocking out our ultimate usage and toughness bar damage. And then once again for Pure Vision, Rappa is actually not that much stronger than Firefly despite Dahlia's weakness implant, but once again likely due to this outrage mechanic that's gonna be from E-Born Deer, and Lingsha just can't really cleanse you fast enough. I doubt a sustainless run is gonna be comfortable because for both the first half, Hule, he hits extremely hard, and then for the second half, like I mentioned, the outrage is just very annoying. And then lastly for Epoch Shadows, I used all 3 Super DPS against sustainless, but only for Side 1 because it was clearly designed for them, with Side 2 having 0 break buffs, and the TV Epoch is not really meant for break, but is more so for every edition like D Herda to lower their toughness. So out of all 3, Firefly was the definitive highest score even on full auto, with her inherent higher speed during SAM, making it that much faster to do with Argenti's toughness bar damage both in phase 1 as well as phase 2, while the rest of the team with Run May Break buff dealt with the summons very quickly. Now the Rappa was also fine with the summons, but had more issues when it comes to the single damage output, eventually also leading to her taking too many hits and dying right before 3700 clear. If she didn't die with that, I would say her performance is probably going to be around a 374, 3750 category, right? And then lastly for Boothill was actually extremely fun, but you definitely needed to manual for sure, otherwise the AI cannot manipulate his cheater mechanic. You can see from this clip over here, where you can do your triple skill by using Fugue and Dahlia ultimates right after casting a Boothill skill, instantly getting 3 pocket trick shots. Exceptional single target burst damage once all the mobs are clear, and frankly, Boothill out of all 3 is my personal favorite super break DPS, at least for this Epoch Shadows. So with that, we have pretty much come to the end of Dahlia's early access server. Compared to Cyrene, you know, I'm pretty thankful that this was not that crazy, right? A little bit of a breather for me and my editor. So just some final thoughts. I would say that the super break is definitely gonna be a upgrade with the Dahlia. The environment should also be factored in because we are gonna be getting a shield environment super break. So going forward in the long-term performance, look forward to see how that's gonna be doing. And then for the Dahlia's E1, it does hold protection against toughness bar inflation, and her S1 isn't really needed, and her E0S0 is gonna be completely fine, especially for just a one-cost upgrade. So as of right now, Firefly is the favorite super break DPS, though it is not gonna be a must pull team for any means necessary. You definitely do not need super break DPS because you just saw the drip marketing as the time of this recording. We are going to be going to the I think Plan Arcadia, so a lot of new news over there, so don't feel the FOMO. If you want to play super break, sure, go for it, but if you don't want to play super break, don't feel pressured to just play this just because version 3.8 is going to be having a break shield patch, right? So very nice for mains bringing their super break going into version 4. So with that, we have come to the end of Dahlia's early access server. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. We're getting a couple of like the brand new anomaly arbitration, brand new boss, as well as the zero cycles. Word of the day is gonna be big. Join Discord, join the use code for 10% off gamer subs. All the best, my good. See you guys next time. Take care.